All right, there's Trent. Awesome. There we go. Trent, you should be able to speak now.
I'm here. I'm here. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can get send this out.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
What does this do? All right, there we go. All right, man. Thanks for inviting me onto the show, and great to get connected and everything like that. I look forward to talking about this topic a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping some people join in. I understand if people aren't going to immediately join in. Um, obviously it's a Tuesday. Not everyone likes Twitter on a Tuesday. So, um, but definitely appreciate you coming on to talk about this. I feel that you know, there's been a lot that's happening with esports for quite some time that hasn't been talked about, and it sort of needs to be talked about. So I'm glad to have you, and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I posted that thread today about esports partnerships in the community. For those listening after and those joining in on the live, I run a community called Esports Business Network. It's a new feature on Twitter, and I'm trying to build up the audience in there and start the conversation and everything like that. And I had a 15-point thread, and that's how we got connected and started the idea of me joining you on the podcast and doing this first live audio session.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like I really appreciate you, um, bringing this like point of view and everything and willing to talk about it. I apologize, guys, if you hear like any background audio. I'm going to be on my computer at least having hopefully the audio from the spaces playing that way, or if not, it doesn't matter necessarily. But I at least want to try to have it. Hopefully, if not, it is what it is. But ultimately, Trent, I certainly agree with your standpoints on things, and how I feel that again we really need to talk about these things. So first off, if you want to kind of give a little bit of insight to this thread that you talked about, I'd certainly love to start off there.
Yeah. So first off, let me kind of give a little bit of a history to how I got involved in esports, and then go from there for your audience. So, my name's Trent Knox. I have been in and around the esports space since about 2012. I went to the University of Hawaii and studied digital cinema there, and got kind of involved on the local scene for StarCraft 2 at the time, and was active somewhat in like the GOM TV chats and on Twitch in the early days. I didn't actually activate a Twitch account until 2015, but um, I got involved with that, and then went to. I'm hearing some feedback. It might be the
No, no,
your
that's my side of things. So that's on my end. So I'll mute here. So
gotcha. There we go. There we go. So then I went from there to back to Austin, and then 2018 got more involved with gaming and esports at a professional level, more on the business to business side. I went to South by Southwest, and then DreamHack, and then Overwatch League, and Call of Duty League, and Riot, League of Legends, LCS type stuff. And so what all of that transpires into today, where I'm just seeing a lot of like discrepancies and issues with partnerships and the term partnerships in the gaming and esports space, which motivated me to make this Twitter thread about like what the process is when an influencer, we use the word influencer in exchange for streamer or content creator or whatever the case may be. And their process of like agreeing to a contract that comes from a brand or or a sponsor or any affiliated uh, opportunity that they might come across. And you know, my issue and the problem that I was presenting is that a lot of content creators, streamers, influencers get kind of the wool pulled over their eyes when it comes to starting out in this business, or let's call it industry, um, being offered different sorts of affiliate deals, whether that be food and beverage, like beef jerky, energy drinks, even these meal supplements or like full on meal delivery services. And they're told like it's going to be so much opportunity if they promote it to their audience. And then, in some circumstances, those brands either, um, you know, pivot in a different direction or they start selling a competitive product to another affiliate that they're working with, which puts them like in a point of contention between some of the brands that they work with. And so that's where this kind of conversation started. And, I'd love to hear your feedback and then kind of go it from there.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, as someone who has been in the space for, quite some time, one of the things I always deal with is this sort of way that like brands and agencies and influencers and all that reach out, and it's one of those things that I find generally to be like a lot of people don't realize how it actually comes about. And so like, first off, like you mentioned, and I have the Twitter thread like pulled up in front of me, is that like a lot of these terms, like for instance, you mentioned like an influencer not being able to engage with like relationships outside of that contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, like there's a couple creators who I know who are part of esports teams, and um, we're like advising with different startups, and some of those startups, like, they ask like, hey, can you reach out to people? Can you do this and this for us? And they're like, no, I can't because my esports contract, first off states that I'm not allowed to do any outside business, which is like, ridiculous as is for sure. When you think about it, on top of that, like there's a lot of um, especially with these partnership agreements where like people get taken advantage of, right? And um, I talked about this with a really well-known lawyer recently on one of his Twitter spaces. I forget the name of him. I apologize because I'm gonna remember it after this. Um, about how creators get taken advantage of so often, whether it is from the perspective of a typical influencer signing to an org, whether it's an influencer signing a partnership or sponsorship type of agreement. And especially again, like you see this with a lot of other ones where it's a non-compete. So like you risk across the board so many like terrifying things happening as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, um, oh, did I just drop off? Am I still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, I'm still here. So I was about to say that that's a good point you make there with the fact that there are so many different terminologies, and there's the common, you know, uh, definition of a lot of these words, and then there's the legalese definition, and neither. I'm not, I don't know your background, but I can tell you from my point of view that I am not an attorney, and I work with a couple of great attorneys who do speak on these subject matters, and they have a podcast as well, the Law of Esports podcast. I want to give them a shout out, and they talk about these subjects about like contracts and whatnot. The big thing you mentioned there was the fact of non compete, and I mentioned it I think in the thread, but I can't remember exactly what point it was, that many of these brands are being operated by entrepreneurs who are, startups of their own. I've been in, uh, you know, you could categorize what I do to be the kind of the same position as many of these platforms or you know product oriented businesses for the gaming and esports
Yeah.
industry. Um, and they don't have a whole lot of capital to be deploying on influencers, and so they're not necessarily prepared to be like doing good business, in my opinion, with influencers of any type, whether that be micro influencers or um,
Yeah.
effectively celebrities, like I mentioned at the very end with like the XQCs and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, it's one of those things that I don't think people realize is like a lot of esports orgs, even some of the bigger ones like FaZe, are not profitable. They're hemorrhaging cash. They're missing their earnings. You look at other organizations out there across the board, they are just subsequently like I guarantee you a big reason as to why over the last couple of years you've probably seen a lot of companies shut down or startups or esports orgs to be more exact, like shutting down is because esports is a so cash heavy intensive operation that like it is so hard to get yourself out of because the thing I learned without realizing over time is like esports is great to grow in, and like that's how to build somewhat a massive audience unless you're like building a stream team that has tons of people that are very well known, and building something like a Limitless or a Horizon Union or whatever the case may be. But also from an esports perspective, it's just so cash intensive that a lot of brands have had to shut down. A lot of brands are going to other, like there's a lot of teams who are going to other owners and asking like, "Hey, do you want to invest in us?" Right? I had two teams from the Fortnite space reach out to me and be like, "Do like we want we need your potential investment in our organization, or would you like to invest in us?" I even had a really well known, like I would say top 20 esports organization in the world, like has like most people will be shocked to know the name that came to me and was like, "Would you like to be part of our series round of investing?" Because like that, and that person had to reach out to me on LinkedIn of all, or not LinkedIn, actually Slack of all places
Mm-hmm.
at first, and for you to have to message to me on Slack when there are tons of VCs out there with the background that this one organization had would like probably like crater the confidence of a lot of people in esports, like across the board. On top of that, like you bring up people like what happened with XQC is that like again like 99% of influencers sign these contracts, they get locked in them. They're like until the term dies, really. And like in the case of people like XQC or Ninja or um I'm forgetting the other person, but like when Ninja and someone else were at Mixer, like when Mixer shut down, they got paid out their contracts, like the remaining of it. Like their attorneys went and got paid out everything, right? So like I certainly agree with you that like a lot of these deals that are being made, whether it's from an influencer to a company doing a partnership, a streaming deal, whatever the case may be, is certainly like really annoying.
Yeah, and I want to take a moment to for the both of us to say, I think this goes um, for both of us, is that there's a disclaimer that this is not business or legal advice. Um, so
Yeah,
do as you may with this information, but um, you you nailed a few different things, and I'm curious. I mean, this is a great opportunity to be on your show and everything that's done for you. Give me the opportunity to speak to your audience. But my question um, for you is, I'm not sure how old are you?
I'm 22.
You're 22, right? So you're not 14, right? Which would be even more of a question as to like how someone would be capable of understanding this. But even at 22, I'm a bit frustrated because these issues shouldn't be of concern to someone of your generation, right? It means that a lot of problems haven't been solved by previous generations of esports professionals. And we can go into the fact that a lot of opportunity has been gate kept, from folks that were in my generation, and now I feel like that's kind of being put into your lap now, um in the fact that now the generation that you're that you come from is now faced with these same sort of cumbersome uh environment of problems that could have been solved, I think, 10 years ago, if folks had stopped to think about the the where the most competitive players are going to come from, right? It's not going to be
Yeah.
coming from the the families that can afford these crazy rigged out PCs. It's going to come from the kids who are super hungry and competitive that have a
Yeah.
reason for wanting to win those prize pools, right? And so,
So sorry for cutting you off
yeah,
here.
no, no
To
worries.
give a
Go.
little bit of context, because I know this is the first time we really like ever chatted. I've been in the esports and the content space for the last 10 years.
Hmm.
So like my esports team in less than 100 days turns 10 years old. So I've seen like this trend happening for a very long time of esports teams running out of liquidity or just flat out scamming people, or companies running out of liquidity and not being, prepared for what comes of that, right? So, I apologize for not giving that like context ahead of time. But like certainly it is something that I've been aware of for quite some time.
Yeah, 10 years of it. So I mean, that would make you like 12 years old. And,
Yeah,
I'm
so
sure,
I started making content when I was 12, and then got like my esports team. We originally started as just a YouTube like community group back in 2013, and by like 2015 we were in esports when that was like the thing, blowing up. Like, I mean, we always talked about like competitive Call of Duty was a thing we did, and like sniping and some other stuff. But eventually, like gradually by 20 mid to late 2015, we were in esports.
yeah. And so that's interesting. So about, 7 years ago now, right? Maybe 8 years
Yeah.
almost. So what's interesting about that? So like 2 years into your experience in the gaming and esports industry, you started to to really see these issues, right? Is that what you're saying?
So I would say that like from 2015 onward,
Yeah.
I definitely started to see these because like and definitely experienced it a little bit of myself actually as well, right?
Hmm.
The reason Awaken got into esports was that it was not monetarily, like nothing we've ever done is to create a profit, because the way I've always ran Awaken, is that this is an esports team, a content creation organization at its core, just trying to help build careers, help people like scale themselves, and also develop people. It has never once been about profit, right? There are times where yes, if we place in the money, I say, hey, give us what we're rightfully due, but otherwise, like I don't care. I keep the esports side of things very little cash burned, so I don't have to worry about these things, right? Or like we very highly budget things out between rosters that we have, and the rosters that we spend on some of our sister organizations that are under our umbrella, so that again, like, ultimately things don't cost as much, right? Like during the pandemic, especially like 2020, 2021, we were not, we never paid for a team for a CBL online major. We we ran primarily. I mean, I'm sure we had. I think we did some Counter Strike and some Rainbow Six and stuff like that, which were very, like, again, low, like, cost. In terms of things, like, a season of CS:GO is like $60 compared to like one major for Call of Duty, which is like hundreds upon hundreds of dollars before factoring travel and hotel. But so getting back to what I'm saying is, like, I certainly have been aware for like 2016 onward that esports teams are not profitable, should not, like, at a large scale, like, unless you're one of the top 10 big esports organizations out there, um, you should not be focusing on whether or not you make profit off an event or like any of this. Like, there's actually a really good conversation that some owners were having, and this was over Twitter and everything, and I was included in this, where with this recent Call of Duty Minnesota event that just happened, there were a lot of teams, top 8, top 16, and even like in the top 64, or I think it was primarily top 64, that were wanting like full funding for the event, or wanting team pass reimbursement, hotel, flights, all this and that, with like a couple weeks out from the event. And a lot of people don't realize that in the Call of Duty space, you have to essentially have a top 8 to top 16 team just to essentially like break even or make profit, right? Like, that's how terrifying it's been over the last couple of years, is that, like, if you don't place that top 8 to top 16 as a challengers team, then an organization basically just spent thousands upon thousands of dollars to basically send a team to an event for potential exposure, even in a league when there is no exposure, right? Like 2019 Call of Duty, before it franchised, was actively streaming the amateur bracket, right? The open bracket matches. As they franchised, they've not done that. And, like, that hurts, like teams, rosters, everything in between. So, like, that's the thing, is that, like, and that's why you see so many organizations so heavily invest. Like, this is why I'll give it a couple examples. 100 Thieves has raised, like, collectively, let's say $100 million at this point, right? What have they been doing with that money? Merchandise, buying companies, creating a video game, all sorts of other stuff, plus the esports, right? But, like, you look at how coming out the gate, there are content facilities, the Cash App compound. You look at the production value behind what they do, High Ground, all the, the same thing you see with like FaZe Clan, where they bought the energy drink brand Control. That, you see this with Optic, where they've bought different brands. They bought back the esports stadium in Arlington. Why do they do it? Because, like, one, they can, and two, because all those over time will create more cash flow and revenue than the organization's rosters actually will.
Wow, man. Um, I mean, both
I
those
know
last
it's
two.
kind of a bombshell. Like, this is why, like, the Score Esports actually just went through like FaZe's third quarter filings and noted that, like, FaZe is not looking good from a profitability standpoint. Like, they're having trouble trying to get like, they're certainly good at what they do, but they are trying to realize, like, hey, having Snoop Dogg on the board of directors is, it's a good thing, but it's not necessarily a great thing if you're trying to establish a company to target Gen Z, when, like, Gen Z, first off, is not really going to know who Snoop Dogg is. but also at the same time, you had the problem of turning Gen Z hype into revenue.
Yeah. And your last two, um, you know, comments and everything that you said there's a lot to unpack. In some ways, you've got a plethora of more competitive gaming experience than I do. Um, and coming in from that perspective, um, it's slightly different than where I'm coming from. Um, and you hit a lot of notes that are, you know, closer to what I do than what like I guess the real esports label is, because I work primarily more on the entertainment side of esports than the competitive side.
Yeah.
Um, and what's so interesting about that is, you spoke about Call of Duty and all of that, and I recently had a post on TikTok that I had some backlash about that people mentioned that they kind of they thought that I'm a Call of Duty FPS world sweaty because all of the examples that I used were FPS games in the post that I'd made. Um, and so I'll I'll try with what I'm going to say here to try and be more generalistic across the board. But listen to what Tristan's saying here, because these are the challengers of the world, the contenders also on Overwatch and everything like that, are what feed into what is considered like the true tier one professional leagues and whatnot. People do get drafted up from challengers to pro orgs like a FaZe Clan and
Yeah.
whatnot. So there is a authenticity to professional esports.
There's a value the way I think you're trying to frame it is there's a beneficial value in these rosters and drafting a player from an amateur up to the pro rosters, creating more value for organization or more social value and brand value
Mhm.
for organizations across the board. I hope that's what we correct in where you're going.
Well, so the post that I had made was that effectively esports at this state is not competitive; it's entertainment. It's closer to music industry, fashion industry, music industry. Um, I think I might have mentioned the same things twice. Movie industry, I should say, than it is, traditional sports leagues like the NHL, NBA, NFL, etc. And I didn't say it that way in the post. I should have, but that's where I think people got maybe confused. Was I wasn't talking about leagues. Should have been talking about leagues. I was talking about actual sports. So when people talk about path to pro, right? So
Yeah,
that's where we're talking about amateur players that are basically going through a farm league of the challengers bracket into professional league. I always say this to folks who are like new to esports in a way, that there's enough money if you are truly competitive to be playing in the so-called tier 3 2 esports space. If you're you know if your team is open-minded to like wager matches, cash games, um unsanctioned tournaments, and these sort of things. Now, I would have to, lean on your experience to see has there ever been, any pushback about those things from a Call of Duty. I don't know. I know it is the truth when it comes to the fighting game communities, and more specifically Smash, when there's any unsanctioned esports teams or unsanctioned esports competitions, the developer shut the game down or shut the tournament down.
yeah, I know that situation just sort of happened with the Smash World Tour and Panda, and I think what their former CEO was doing was absolutely disgusting. Like when I started reading into it, where he was going to a lot of these tournament operators and saying, Nintendo's not going to look pretty favorably on you if I have anything to do about it, or saying like, oh, like don't worry, they won't be around after next year, like insinuating he would get an operator shut down. I certainly like. I think that that's one of the most deplorable things you can do as an executive, especially the owner of a another tournament operator, because essentially it dug his grave.
Hmm.
Um, and like I was looking at it the whole time and being like, why would you do this? Um, Additionally, though, I agree. Esports these days is turning more into entertainment than it is, and like entertainment in a business venture than it was in the past, right? These broadcast rights for um these leagues, like I forget what YouTube first paid for the Overwatch League, what they're currently paying for the Call of Duty League. I know when it was like under Twitch, I think that they were paying like when the Overwatch League was under Twitch. I believe the first year was like $60 million. I could be very wrong on this, but like I remember that, and or at least like it was a couple tens of millions of dollars,
Hmm.
and you have to wonder like what the broadcast rights would be worth with today if they were to re-extend that contract. You're talking hundreds of millions of dollars based off viewership and data and all these sorts of things. So like I agree with you there. Even like you look at let's say like the Fortnite World Cup for instance, Epic Games treated that like a whole spectacle. They rented out one of the biggest, or they hosted it in one of the biggest stadiums in New York. They made it a whole like experience. They did all sorts of things around the city, like so I agree with you. Esports is becoming more of an entertainment entity than it is like a competitive, right? Which I'm not saying is a bad thing. It's good to be competitive and be entertaining at the same time. But you're valuing one over the other in terms of value and holistic approach than you do anything else.
Yeah, and I'm stepping up this ladder as carefully as possible because when I did make this post and why I got so many trolls, in the comments, you know, disagreeing and saying different things was that I said a very trolly thing when it comes to gaming and esports. I said that it it's scripted. I just said it's scripted, right? So that has a very negative connotation attached to it from a
Yeah.
perspective of the fact that I'm saying that some of these players, if stacked up against other, you know, players in the amateur side, they wouldn't be able to outperform. But because they
Oh
have,
no, absolutely. I mean, there's always been, I would say, to some extent,
yep.
a you know a lot of people would like to believe it's a randomized bracket, and I think with some tournament organizers, especially in the amateur space, that's certainly how it is that it is very much sort of randomized. But you do have the occasional aspect of things where esports is um, very much like pitting, and I know this because I tried running a tournament operator at one time, and I specifically remember I was like, I'm gonna put this team who's in this country against this team who's in this country. This is gonna be the rival that they have.
Hmm.
This is this team and this is their rival. So like certainly like it is to that
Well,
extent. Like
that's
I
the
would have
less
randomized the
egregious.
bracket.
That's the less
Yeah.
egregious reality.
Yeah, but no, like I get what you're saying, and
How
you know,
controversial do
uh,
you want to get? Because we could get down to match fixing. Like,
I'm not going to get down to any of that because there's more match fixing on a individual player level than there is at a corporatized level. Like, if we were saying like, oh, Activision employees or Riot Game employees allegedly are betting on matches, that'd be one thing versus just like, hey, you know, the things that have happened in CS:GO or in other things like, it's one of those things that I don't think there's never been an aspect of. So I don't think we really need to touch on that. I'd love to go back though to the original like part of this conversation we were having about influencers, especially from an entertainment standpoint, where um, and bring up like how um, and whether or not this can apply to esports, but also just the problems that organizations are having with partnerships
Hmm. Yeah.
and like monetizing, but also creating value out of those partnerships.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's just tie a bow on that competitive aspect for a bit here. Um,
Sure.
in order to afford to be competitive, even if you are cheating in the games, you have to have money to do it, and that's where that component of the influence comes in, where eyeballs. Right now we live in the attention economy, and advertisers are spending, on average, 50 cents to a dollar for 1,000 views or something like that.
Yeah.
So, um,
I just want to say, like, he's not wrong on that number. I can verify that.
well, it definitely depends, what your YouTube looks like, or, what audience that you're targeting, because like a phase clan is less family friendly than a Cloud9 or something like that. So there are going to be certain advertisers where you might get a higher CPM or whatnot, but um, you know, on average, you know, micro influencers to macro influencers, that's about right. So what ends up happening is content creators start out generally as independent operators. So they're not signed to an org, they don't have an agent, they don't have a manager, they don't have legal, uh, you name it,
Yeah.
they don't have it. They might have their parents, right? And in
Yeah.
that circumstance, I don't know if that's the case with you, but um,
So
more so
I
now.
have I've had it in the past with a lot. The big time where I've ever dealt with parents
Hmm.
on in sports and influencer side is breaking down to them. First off, like who I am, what my organization does, and then like ultimately talking about if it's a player, right? Like my organization, we used to recruit people who were 15, 16, 17 years old. So like and that was because like there were really talented 15, 16-year olds in the CS:GO space or in like the League of Legends space or whatever the case may be, even in some of the battle royales out there, like Fortnite, like is predominantly 15 to 17-year olds, right? And I would have to explain to a lot of these parents, ultimately that like the thing is that we want to help build that your son or daughter's career in esports. Having the sponsors, having the connection, having obviously the financial aspect of things covered, whereas a player wouldn't have to worry about that, right? So like that's one of the things across the board that I do always like discuss about with parents. From a content creator standpoint, a lot of times I've never really had to deal with that. It's more always just talking independently with that creator. Now, like one of the things with my organization is that we do have an in-house talent agency, very similar to how like Team Liquid and TSM and FaZe Clan have their own, right? And it's not a bad thing by any means, right? I don't force any of my members to be part of it, but I do say as a benefit of joining, hey, we have an in-house talent agency. We can work on getting you partnerships, brand affiliation deals, sponsorships, building connections to help you, but it is something that we're not going to force on you. The same way where we don't force contracts on people. Both with my content creator and my esports player contracts that I've had over time, we never once put a content creator or a player into a buyout. So like you see this with a lot of creators, a lot of players where they go, I want to leave my org, I'm not happy, but I have to pay a buyout to get out. I saw that so many times where I basically said, I don't want that to be the case. So, also, Mike, I appreciate you joining in here. I just wanted to quickly acknowledge that you jumped in here. If you have anything to say on the conversation, definitely feel free to request, and we'll bring you up here. But I definitely agree. Trent, move like where you're going.
Yeah, I'm listening to what your experiences and everything, and I always come from the the perspective of an individual content creator. Um, I've worked with a ton of different freelancers and contractors in different mediums uh, of content creation, and so I'm sort of taking experience from different industries and coupling them up when it does come to the esports industry. Um, my experience comes more primarily from the B2B side when it comes to esports, but when it comes to like more gaming stuff, I've done some B2C type contracts and some other things. I stay kind of in my lane when it comes to esports, so I'm not like working a lot with players or tournaments or anything like that. Sometimes I'll dabble into it, but nothing really too heavy because when you start getting into that space, the management, the team owners, the legal, the parents, the friends and other family that get associated with this talent component can end up being problematic. And so, you know, um, as an individual content creator that's maybe like making content on a Twitch or making YouTube videos, that's a lot easier because I can present to them on a B2B model, an opportunity that isn't going to be where the splits are 5 or 6 ways to Sunday, like I mentioned in the thread. So, um, I really, you know, think that what you're doing with your content creators is one of the good ways to to do negotiations when representing a content creator because you are doing it in a way that um, you're looking out for their interests, but of course you have your own business interests is operating sort of as an agency for these content creators. So you know you can't necessarily work with super small content creators because they're not necessarily going to be bringing in a whole lot of revenue, right? And then taking 15 to 25% of the sponsorship or their affiliate deals that you bring to them is not like fiscally responsible. I shouldn't say responsible, but it's not like you know what's the right terminology for this? Like it just doesn't seem
Ethical.
right. Yeah, ethical, right? Fiscally ethical. This isn't
So I
that's a
think
thing.
it also comes down to the fact that I myself am a content creator. I want to be as friendly to content creators as I possibly can. Now, let's be very clear. I take no percentage of revenue from any of my streamers, past, present, or in the future. Right? I take no percentage of sponsorship deals that they have externally or internally. Right? I take no percentage of their stream revenues, of their YouTube revenues, if they make any. I take none of that. And the reason why is again simply I don't care about revenue, right? I don't need like I can run my esports org or just awaken as a whole, whether it's the esports, the content, the merch, any of the sister businesses that we have, practically at a cost to where it is not bleeding me dry to do this, right? Like, this is why, like, when you see teams spending, hundreds or thousands of dollars on a logo, to rebrand after, let's say 3, 4, 5 years, I'm not doing that. You look
Mm.
at, there are teams that are there are like teams throwing around $300 a month to, sign Twitch partners, right? And, it's like that's great and all, like, all the more to them. I'm not going to do that because, like, I have this um sort of stance on esports and content and everything when it comes to gaming, and it's sort of the same thing with business, is that the smartest will outlive the spenders, right? If you're someone that's spending, like, you know let's say $8,000 here on a Call of Duty team, spending, let's say, 3 grand on content creators, you're buying a team house, you're doing all this production equipment, everything in between, right? You eventually are going to bleed out somewhere, right? Like, it is historical with teams that have had streaming houses, right? Or just brands in general that have had streaming houses. They inevitably end up in a massive failure, right? Like, you look at FaZe no longer has the FaZe houses that it used to. You look at the teams like Red Reserve, which came from under FaZe Clan originally and split off, which no longer exists because they merged with another organization who didn't understand the culture of Red Reserve. And Red Reserve itself had a massive team house that basically all the members in the team house split from the organization because they didn't agree with Orbit. You look at Ross. I mean, you look at other teams out there that have, or not even teams. Let's say from an entertainment standpoint, you look at what happened with the mob, right? Like, that crashed and burned, to a point where, like, we, saw a whole Twitter drama about it. You look at brands out there like Offline TV, which Pokimane and all them were a part of. There's still drama coming out of that, even in this year, right? And that, like, all those people split a very long time ago. You look at what's happening with other groups like OTK, who, I mean, again, like, it's a widespread issue across the board. I think additionally, the other thing to keep in mind, right, is that, um, like, even when my talent agency, which is a separate business operation that I have, I've always made it very clear to my talent, I do not work for you. I am going to work with you. That does not mean that I am here to trap you in a 360 deal and, again, like in your words, screw people 7 ways to Sunday. It is that I genuinely want to help somebody and be a helping hand, not a, like, because I'm originally from Los Angeles. I know what the entertainment industry, what the talent industry has sucked out of people, and it's deplorable. Okay. So, like, I take all these lessons that I see, and I very much learn quickly. Hey, this is what you should not do. That these bigger people in bigger positions than you are doing, and look at how it's screwing up for them. So it's these types of things that, like, people need to realize across the board.
I think you got to a point at which really resonates with me, and makes me start thinking of, like, it's conversations like these that I just don't think are happening at scale enough to
Yeah.
get to the points of establishment. So what when you started to go toward the AOTK rant, I was like, ah, you're about to say it, and then you went a different direction. So then I was like, okay, wait, okay, so we're now where I wanted to go with this, in a sense, is you talked about how basically smaller team houses funnel into larger team houses, and this is something I've actually never really talked about.
Well, what I mainly was talking about with team houses is that team houses historically, like, as a cash purchase or as a, like, business investment for whether it is a esports organization, a content brand, a stream team, a
Right.
media property has historically failed, like across the board, right? The only cases in which I think teams are still doing is like, 100 Thieves like does pick where like within a certain aspect of where members live, or it like has a compound, obviously like the Rocket Mortgage Team House. Cloud9 has always had one. TSM has one. Team Liquid, I think they used to, but now they just have like one little like headquarters in Santa Monica. And then like, you look at some of these other organizations out there, like Optic, which has, the the house there in Frisco for some of the members, and like so forth. But like that's what I was saying is like, outside of the bigger teams, when you look at these smaller, like couple thousand followers to, your sort of larger like stream teams that are susceptible to drama and just like fatigue over time, it ends up like, you'll see a team get like a house that is, let's say, on a, typically a renting basis, which might be a year-long contract. Or, I've never seen a team outside of like ones that have millions of dollars invested into them where they've either outright bought a property or mortgaged it. But like the problem you see is that, like, again, like an offline TV or OTK, they'll buy a team house for all these members to live in, and eventually, like a year and a half later, half the people in that, you know, house are no longer there because of drama, or just like the house itself caused the organization to go into, you know, financial disarray.
Well, I like where you're going with this. I think that it's important maybe to preface a little bit about what the purpose of a team house is. Um, and um, and then the reason why I wanted to go in this direction a little bit is because of the fact that the Esports Awards just concluded about a week
Yeah,
ago. And what kind of frustrated me, and it's weirdly kind of like how each esports awards has gotten just a little bit better and a little bit better over the course of like its existence. You know, it's less, you know, actually the my grievances with the esports awards seem to change each year. And this particular year, I felt that it was like by giving the content series of the year to the show players just felt
yeah.
like that somebody was laughing in the face of authentic esports. It was like the
So I don't
quintessential.
necessarily agree. I would, and sorry for cutting you off there.
Yeah, no
I would
worries.
disagree to a point, because those types of documentaries like Players. Now, I granted I have not seen it because I know it's on Paramount Plus and I don't have Paramount Plus, but a lot of those documentaries they do
Wait, well,
try
hold on.
to.
It's not a documentary; it's a mockumentary. So
Well,
it's a
well,
vastly
I have
different.
not seen, so that's why I'm saying documentary, right? Like I have not seen it with my own eyes, so I cannot definitively say like, yes, this is a joke, series or something of that nature, right?
Oh,
I'm being
okay.
fair, giving the benefit of the doubt on my end because I've not seen it,
Well, it's
right?
by
If I
by
if I were
definition without having seen it.
if I if I if I were to go download Paramount Plus today and sign up and like watch it, and like can tell that like, hey, a lot of the points that you're bringing up in this are not actually, or like you're not actively portraying esports in the right way and the right like light, I would certainly criticize it, in those regards. So I
Well,
can certainly agree.
what's so interesting about that is that the that's the reason. The reason is that yes, it's a very accurate representation of what esports is because they are trying to. The film is a mockumentary by like its categorization because it's not real. It's not set in the real world. It's set in a fictitious world of League of Legends, right? So it is
Okay.
accurate to the relationships that players have with
So
esports
it's fair to
organizations.
characterize that player is, and again, sorry for cutting you off. It's fair to sort of characterize that players, and again, I've not seen it, is sort of like how Rocket Jump treated VGHS back in the day.
I'm not familiar with this, but I'll let me see.
So
Rocket Jump.
Rocket Jump was created by Freddie Wong. VGHS was Video Game High School, basically like one of the early YouTube web series. But like was sort of the whole idea of competitive gaming, but like at a massive calling it a high school is kind of a joke because they filmed it in like a really big, huge like I think it was a whole campus or something, but they put like a ton of production into it. But like what wasn't like a real world setting.
Well, I can't really associate these two, but with this particular example, it's more aligned with real world, and I've found that a lot of people thought players was a real world example of the
Oh,
League of Legends because of the fact that people don't follow, and this goes back to what I understand why the trolls were coming at me when I was on TikTok saying like you only talk about FPS games because a lot, and they mentioned this on the broadcast of the Esports Awards, so I have to give it to them that the hosts who really have like a lot of clout in this business did say that there's not many commentators who do multi-game commentation.
yeah,
Is that the
like
right word?
I mean,
Shoutcasting.
like that's to be fair, right? Like if you're a Riot caster, you typically stay in the LCS, or I mean, like the way it is typically is like there's a few who have gone multi-game. Okay, Golden Boy is one of those for sure. Who like you can put him in a fighting game. You can put him in or a fighting game commentating role. You can put him in a Call of Duty space. You can put him in Halo. He'll excel. You can do the same with like Courage, right? Courage is
Right. Yeah.
is someone who's in the Call of Duty space. Went over the Fortnite, did exceptionally well even over there. We miss him in the Call of Duty space for sure. Uh, but again, like when you're in Riot, like the LCS ecosystem, really the only if you get tired of Riot, it's like, hey, the closest thing to Riot is really or to LCS really is like Valorant or Overwatch. But it's like, do I really want to go cast Overwatch? No. I want to stick with games I'm comfortable with. The same where like a lot of CS commentators at a large level are stuck in the CS world because that's a game that they love and they don't want to separate out of that world. So like I certainly do agree with where you're coming from.
Well, so see, the reason why I go and talk about this is because from a B2B standpoint, there's no room there's no room for not being multi-game. Like you can't be single game. Uh, you can't make deals on single games on a B2B standpoint. And
No,
the reason why that is because the conversation as it pertains to like speaking with potential advertisers or anyone in this space to make a deal for mass influencer marketing. So this is where this gets to like a bigger picture of like
yeah,
they they're not going to put all of their eggs in a singular basket unless you're talking about make brokering a deal between something like Coca-Cola and Riot. Riot can then use that money to go to League of Legends and then go to Valorant, and then this new FG C game is going to be Arcane. I don't know what they end
Sure.
up calling it, right? But then they have an ecosystem for advertiser dollars to come in, and then you know, hopefully, let's say hopefully, or ideally, we should say for content creators within that singular game environment, like they just play League of Legends,
Sure.
um, they will get unfortunately trickle down economics to where they get paid out. They're the last ones to eat, of course, at the table because everyone's taking a little bit along the way. Um, but like I said, there's not much room for it. So as like someone like myself, I struggle to know everything that's going on in each little niche community within Rocket League, within League of Legends, within Dota, and then you kind of were going in this direction that, but didn't say it that these leagues don't necessarily speak the same language, even English. Like CS:GO primarily is a European, model, right? It's not like the majority of players are Russian speaking or they're, Eastern European language, German.
So a significant portion of it is European, but there's still and like this is the thing, right? Like American esports is not. I think that there's severely a lot of things that we lack in, compared to international esports organizations or operations. Right? You look at like how Fnatic. I'll bring it up from a business standpoint. First one to do fan memberships. First ones to do a crowdfunding as far as it goes for an esports team, right?
Mhm.
Um, you look at some of these other, I mean, like having some of these amateur leagues that are treated as your top tier in a sense. Like I'm blanking on one of them, but like a good friend of mine runs Vipero, and like they're in one of the big like European leagues from an aspect of things,
Mhm.
and um, ultimately, like when it comes down to it, I'm looking up the name of that specific league, um, but like they compete in like the EU Pro League, right? Do you look at
Mhm.
when you look at some of these other leagues as well out there? Like I'm trying to pull up one of them here, but like that's a big thing that I don't think a lot of people do like realize is that um
That's what I wanted to hear from you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear from you. And that's why advertisers don't know what they're doing in esports because the consumers don't know what they're doing in esports.
yeah, that's certainly the case. And I just looked it up. Like it's the UK and Ireland circuit, which is part of like Face It Hub. So
Face it, ESL face it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
well, Face It is separate, but like there's UK and Ireland circuits. Just like how we have like some amateur ones out here as well in the States. Like you're starting to see like pop up more and everything. But there's also still like um other ones that are more like prominent when it comes down to it. That um and so like I think it's also across the board that esports operators and publishers, they aren't on the same language a lot of the time. You bring this up on the same language is not only advertisers but also with the audience, with the competitive organizations that take part in these leagues. Like this is just what's happening with Call of Duty, where recently Hex, right, the founder and CEO of Op,
I like where
or
you're going with this too. I like this. Keep going, man.
he
You're on
went on a
fire.
full-on podcast, and and he's done this before, and even Nate Shot has done this before, where vehemently will just tear into Activision and how they run the CDO. I've openly talked about how I hate the way that the Overwatch system is, because what they did is when they franchised the Overwatch League, there were all these other community tournaments who really became not important, right? Like I remember a year after the Overwatch League was created, I was talking to somebody and I said, like, hey, I just want to get like an Overwatch team out there for console. And somebody said to me, like, there's no tournament circuits for it
Hmm. Hmm.
because everything is Path to Pro challenge, or or whatever, like the three-tiered system, or Path to Pro contenders in the Overwatch League, that which is still around. And I mean, it's easy to say that the Overwatch League, does anyone actually care about it anymore? Not really.
Oh, oh, spicy.
Like I mean that. Like genuinely, I remember right before the Call of Duty League officially launched, like I made a video out of a three-part series that I planned on doing, where all I talked about was, in my eyes, why I thought the CDL was going to fail. And like if it's easy for someone like me who is not part of the league, who has no
Oh,
concept of Activision, to be able to see, hey, a $25 million buy-in is a bad idea. To see some of these other things happening is a bad idea. Like it's that says something right there.
well, here's the thing. I like where you're going with this. I just want to put some words out there. Is they're not saying this directly to people that are not a part of their crowd or clique, but what their body
It's their
language, their
actions that
the way that they do things, they basically say to anybody who's attempting to break into the industry to say something like, know your place. And my thing about the definitions, so this is the thing, and when we talk about language, is make the definitions clear enough. If you want to, if the egoing and all of that stuff is supposed to be valid and vouched, and everyone's vouching for everything, make these things clear so as to there be a path to pro. So that factor of things being unclear plays an advantage to the established um, operators, org operators, not necessarily tournament operators, because it's not in the financial benefit to tournament operators to prevent people from competing, unless for whatever reason we're under the sun, and I've seen this happen before, that individuals within the tournament operation want a certain individual to win. So they break the rules or fix the rules so that other people can win than by going by the rule set, right? So I don't know why that's the case. You
So
know,
I just want to say something on this. What um what he's saying is sort of, I would say, an alleged thing. Like there's always talk of like, oh, CDO, or like this team should have won over this, or like they shouldn't have had to rematch this, but they did. Like I've certainly believed at times, like there's a very well known scandal that I believe in back like 5 years ago during season 0 of Overwatch Contenders, where my organization, we were just killing it on day one, right? Like we made it all the way to a certain round where we ended up playing against Immortals, made them drop a map or something at that point, or no, it was a 2-0 Immortals, but we made them lose points at
right,
one point in time. And so like the next day, right, like first team didn't show, second team we beat 2-0, the third team we were up 1-0, and then an admin comes and says your first round team is still waiting to play you guys, or they're here waiting for you guys, right? And then like after 40 minutes of waiting and killing momentum, then you go and be like, oh, sorry, you guys are right, we're going to reset the third round, and then we end up losing 2-1 because of not like continuing that
Well,
momentum.
that's a whole different version of griefing. I'm literally talking about the rules. Like I'm talking about if, let's say, you qualified for a Rocket League tournament, a sanctioned tournament, but then who's like the biggest Rocket League influencer? Like I can't think of the name off the top of my head right now.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
I
he
I get
hosts
where you're
another
going.
tournament that's operated by Epic. In the
Sure.
rule set, it says that you cannot, if you competed in the previous sanctioned league tournament, you can't also play in the Creator Cup, right? You can't do both because you've already qualified for the league to play
Well,
and things.
I'm trying to understand it. It's saying if you qualified for
It's
like,
essentially saying pros can't go and compete against amateurs if they're already qualified for tournament competition in league based events, and it's
well,
sort of
I actually think that that's quite fair, right? Because like the reason why they don't like this is like a really good reason why you see this like a lot of substitutes that are on Call of Duty rosters being content creators or really good pro players, but
right,
spend most of their time playing like Warzone, or why you see like a lot of people leaving CDL organizations to go to just being a Warzone streamer or whatever, is because that means that they're allowed to go compete in these tournaments, these cash cups on or like whatever's happening with Warzone or these community events or get sent out to things, is because hey, like we're able to do that for you. So like I think any tournament operator that says, hey, if you're already signed to a professional organization at a franchise level or under the um substitute roster or the or academy roster of a top organization of a certain league, that you should not be allowed to go play in these other amateur leagues. I think that's a fair thing to say, because that still gives like amateur players the ability to
right,
have, because let's be fair, at that point what you're doing otherwise is saying, yeah, we are perfectly okay with having a skill based competitive organization competitive format into our esports, right?
right.
Where,
So let me clarify. So what I'm saying is that I've been in circumstances, seen circumstances where pros broke the rule set and played in the cash games, and then Epic did not enforce the rule set. So
so
then the amateur players don't get the prize or don't get to necessarily compete at the level
So
that
I
is
will have to look
fair.
into, like, I'll have to look into
Yeah.
the situation you're talking about, because I'm not familiar with it. Now, granted, I don't spend my time in the Fortnite scene for a plethora of reasons. Let alone the fact that like in my personal belief, a
Well,
lot of
you just had a Freudian slip, but that's cool. I was keeping it out of the Fortnite scene, specifically using an example of Rocket League. But
I'm saying there's many different esports titles that I don't pay
yeah, yeah, yeah,
attention to,
yeah,
just
yeah,
for
yeah.
this. Like I pay attention to them, but like not as much as like I probably used to.
Well, it's not
Because,
exclusive. That's why I'm trying to make. That's the argument that I'm making. It's not exclusive to a particular MOBA, FPS,
you're saying
RTS.
it eventually like could become a wider
This is a
problem.
widespread behavioral issue. It's not an issue that's exclusive to any competitive esport
Okay,
at all.
sure.
It's a large scale issue. And so that's the reason what I'm trying to explain is that the behaviors of people in these tournament operators, the way that the developers even behave, and even the players at a low schedule, low level, because a player like throwing the computer or doing something crazy doesn't really affect the sponsorship dollars, right?
Sure.
That's just going to get swept under the rug. Maybe that individual player kind of gets reprimanded. But when bad behaviors happen at the systematic level, that's when sponsorship dollars go out the door. And that's the problem. That's one of the big problems that we have facing esports right now. Aside from the fact that nobody knows what the audience that's being reached, because sponsorship dollars, they're like, oh, we want to reach 18-year-old males between the ages of 18 and 24, right? And and what how is that tracked whatsoever? I mean, Twitch doesn't give age. You know, gender is not even this topic of discussion in this space, and if you do bring it up, it's some sort of egregious, uh, conversation, right? And so
Sure.
like when I'm selling a deal, right, and I'm trying to say this is the reason why you should go with this influencer agency because they reach this demographic, this target audience, these interests, these things. And these deals could be in the form of, um, it could be a lot of different things, but let's just say it's
Yeah.
cash, right? So cash of like $250,000 is the budget. I
Yeah.
mean, someone tell me where I can reach 150, not 100, like 150 influencers pretty easy, but 15,000 influencers with a $250,000 budget that's specific to the gaming and esports industry in that regard. And I'm not losing out on any of the money that I'm spending. That's why these CPMs are so low.
Sure.
You know, it's like it gets to where the point was like why the thread was the way I wrote it.
Sure.
Individuals have to go in and negotiate their own deals. If I'm just going to be honest, not, you know, the majority of orgs that I've spoken with are not as altruistic as you know, you're operating your org.
Sure.
Just look at FaZe Clan, right? The biggest example of this and the deal with Tifu, you know? So
Yeah.
like that's still like that deal should be studied in universities, collegiate esports programs for the rest of eternity. Just as an example of how not to do it, right? And that's just like though that's not stopping. It's not like, you know, that happened and then influencers no longer getting, bad deals, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why is like even for myself, like as a B2B influencer of sorts on not on a content influencer aspect, but like a networking component and who I know and who I do businesses with,
Sure.
I get stupid proposals where it's like agree to this 5-year term in the case where you're going to be, we're going to have an agreement that we do work for 6 months and a renewal, a review period of in a year. Anytime, any point, it could be terminated um, by uh, by the company, but you can't terminate the contract. And in addition, to that being the case, like termination doesn't guarantee that you're out of the non compete. So it's like, what in the world? And if you are somebody who doesn't have, if you're just a kid, I'm 29 now and I've gone through a bunch of bad deals, but the deals are only getting worse, right? And people are, the companies and people who have that don't have that, you know, don't have the morals and ethical values associated to doing business are getting better at making people with bad have bad deals. So I've had gone through those experiences where I created content for a local news agency, or I created content for a local influencer or small business or something like that,
Yeah.
and been given uh like below minimum wage as far as the sponsorship goes, or for the content that was created, or even sold product for companies and gotten not paid based off the commission that I should have been paid, or gotten such a ridiculous commission split on my work that doesn't make any sense. Like, it shouldn't even be legal to give those sorts of low commissions. But it continues to happen. And so, like, we go into the conversation of, like, if you're a kid, you're just taking these deals because it's the only deal that you can get, right? Or at least it's the only.
Yeah.
You don't have the mentorship or the guidance around to suggest that you shouldn't do something, right? And then I don't know what the world looks like in the next 6 months with ChatGPT and all of these AI applications. Do are I don't know. I don't have enough of the ear to the ground as far as it goes with, like, the youth people, as to, like, their adaptations to how to use these tools and whatnot. But are we going in a direction where you know the information is going to be more widely accessible and free to access, and then as individuals, even myself, not just the youths, are going to use that information for the greater good of humanity and an individual? I don't know. So I end up wondering, like, how kids are going to be able to negotiate these contracts so that they can get themselves a, a reasonable sponsorship deal. Let's say they have 100,000 TikTok followers, right? And they're creating FPS highlights, right?
Sure.
Are they going to be able to use an AI to negotiate the deal and create the content and then get paid out? Like, what is your, like, sense of what's happening in the creator economy as it relates to, like, that aspect of content creation and deal making?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly a very good question. Like when it comes down to it, I certainly um love that you bring that up. What I see happening, first off, well, a lot of brands actually have been stopping like their spend towards creators because what I think some have started to realize is that um like the thing is, compared to like how Instagram has been in the past, or some of these other platforms, is that the growth or like the engagement is not always there, right? um like just because you have I guarantee you, right, if you're basing off an overall um follower amount versus like what the actual traction of a post is going to get sponsored wise, like it's probably a night and day comparison. Like if you were to pull up a sponsored post from Charlie D'Amelio right now, whether it's like recent or whatever, it'll be a night and day comparison between like the follower count. So like, you see like a lot of people going, "Oh, I have this much," and like, give me this. Whereas like brands, have to look at like, hey, it's nice that you have, 100,000 followers, 500,000, a million, 10 million, 100 million, whatever the case may be. Can you actually justify your numbers, right? Like if I was to go to my media kit today, I think I think practically the highest I ever charged for a brand deal as of right now was probably like $100. That was with a company that I knew very, very well. Like they're actually the company that my internet is ran through. So like, I didn't even negotiate with them. I just said like, yeah, that's pretty fair, across the board, right? So like, I think like that's something you see. You see a lot of influencers who.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Go right ahead.
Why are you not, as money hungry? Because you talk about that you're not concerned about making money with your org. Why is that?
The reason why I am not concerned with making money off of anything is like that. And well, correction, okay? There are things that if I wanted to monetize, I can effectively monetize. Or a lot of it is, a sort of long-term thing, right? Or, hey, we cannot give you money, but we'll give you this in exchange, right? There are companies who I have done uh brand deals with where I did not get money from them, but I've gotten multiple products from them over time, right? You look at why I heavily still like tell people get an affiliate program partnership out there, treat it like a sponsorship, like whatever they give you, whether it's commission and free products or free products, like treat that as is. Like, yes, if you're someone who's a full-time creator, like, definitely chase the money, but be open to all these other things, right? The other thing
So
for
you're
me is
you're
like,
talk you're talking about in kind sponsorship. So like, what
well,
does in kind sponsorship do for you?
let me kind of finish on with my whole thing.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Sorry about that.
Other reason why I don't necessarily give as much of a shit about money, like from a content creator standpoint, or all this and that, is because I've been at this for 10 years. I got in this, yes, to make a career. Like when, like 12-year-old me thought, like within a year of making videos, I was gonna have 100,000 subscribers. I was gonna be killing it with MCN. I was gonna be on top of the world. Here's 22-year-old me saying, if I could go back in time, I'd slap myself across the face and go, "Huh, buddy, that isn't how it works, right?" Like, and so like I myself have humbled myself, and also I think like you see this with a lot of creators where they make, let's say, $100,000. I mean, not even that. Let's say $50,000 a year off of doing this. Let's say they make 100,000, 200,000, a million a year off of content creation. Go and look at their personality, 3, 4 years ago compared to where they are today. I guarantee you they have changed in some way, shape, or form. You look at a guy like Ninja, who, met like people loved him when he loved him in the beginning with Fortnite, hated him for dropping a masterclass where he literally did nothing but just say, like, in one of those, like, oh, there's a bunch of like tutorials and stuff like that on YouTube to look at for this specific topic that people were paying money to hear from Ninja on how to do, right? So, like, that's the thing, is like the money fucking changes people. Like,
Can I please juxtapose two content creators against each other? Just for
sure,
this sake right here.
sure,
Okay, so I wanted to say earlier that I don't have the perspective of managing a large content creator. To be
sure,
to be frank, you said
sure,
Charlie D'Amelio, and that's where my brain went. But
sure,
I do have the privilege of having been in the room with the largest content creators manager, and
sure,
so I want to juxtapose Ninja against Mr. Beast, right?
sure.
So Ninja's management is Jessica. So,
Formerly was, yes.
well, but he only got to doing that master class through Jessica and doing get good through all of that, right? And Reed is Mr. Beast's manager. So I was able to speak with, and get in a room with Reed early on before the craziness of Mr. Beast at this point. But there's a difference between how Reed managed Mr. Beast versus how Jessica managed, uh, Ninja.
Oh yeah, yes. There's a night and day difference, and like to break it down simply, because I know you'll want me to.
Of
Um,
course, that's what I want to hear.
so the night and day difference between a ninja to a Mr. Beast is this, right? And I want to put my glasses on for this because again, like uh I want to specifically
Break it
like.
down, Professor. Break it
Well, not
down.
only that, but I, given that you asked this, I feel like it is worthy of a TikTok clip. So, but the night and day difference between a Mr. Beast and a Ninja is this. Jessica and Tyler have always managed the brand of Ninja as a personal brand. As and like that is the thing, right? Is it Ninja is the personality and the content is the product, right? And everything goes into that, whether it's the merchandise, whether it's these streaming deals, whether it is getting on the cover of a magazine, or whatever the case may be. It all centers around the personal brand, right? Now, on the other side of things, with Mr. Beast and Reed and Night Media, right? Mr. Beast was doing very well for himself before he ever started like getting into these viral trends of like counting to 100,000 in a live stream or any of that. Like the people like myself who've been creating content for 10 years knew him back when he was creating Call of Duty content that no
Mm-hmm.
longer exists on the internet because all that I think has been purged. All right. So like that's the thing, right? Now to put it into a proper like framework is this. What Reed did from an outside viewpoint is when he started talking to Jimmy is immediately saying it is great to focus on the brand, but it is also very and Pun, I see that you want to join up here. I'll move you up after I finish this just to get my point across. The thing is that Mr. Beast, Jimmy, is not just a personal brand, but they're making sure that they can expand the brand, right? Because eventually Jimmy's going to get tired of doing videos. He's going to feel fatigued by it, right? And it's a whole money making operation over there,
I'll just
right?
say, God forbid.
Like I think it's fair to say eventually, like all of us get tired of making videos, or all of
Yeah.
us, scale down at some point. But ultimately, the thing with Mr. Beast is you have to look at his trajectory. He went from making these viral videos, still makes these viral videos, to now like when the pandemic hit, him and Night Media under the guide and leadership of Reed started expanding out vertically and horizontally with investing into businesses through Night Media and Night Ventures, and now the venture capital fund that they recently raised, where they can go out and wholly acquire companies in the space to generate long-term revenue. You look at what Mr. Beast did with Feastables, with the Mr. Beast
That's
burgers.
I whole,
Those are taking the
and
brand,
this is a key point. This is a key point right here.
taking the brand and not just focusing on the content. Like, yes, the content even helped to scale the sales of a Mr. Beast burger or a Feastable to the point where everyone's like, I gotta have this. Like, even my mom and my sister, who are not typically like don't spend their time on YouTube or TikTok, we're like, we gotta try this, like,
Yep.
and that's one of those things, right? Like, my sister is a huge Carl Jacobs fan. I've known Carl for close to 6-7 years now, right? So like that's something that like I tell people all the time is like, and this is why you see creators focusing on like scaling or launching their own startups, is so that they are very like stable, right? Even to give like a non-gaming or viral perspective, let's take a person like Sebi, right, or Nate O'Brien, right? They're primarily lifestyle finance type of guys on YouTube, right? But one of their really amazing things that they did was, from talking to startups in the finance space and learning about the finance space and sort of lifestyle, is they went and created Roadrunner Ventures, a whole venture capital company based off the success of what they've done, where they've invested in the companies like Carrot and Beacons and tons of other ones that I probably don't
Mm-hmm,
even know
mm-hmm.
the name, because it's all behind the syndicate, right? So like that's the thing, is it's great to focus on a personal brand, but you need to be willing to expand outwards, and you need to be willing to leverage. A guy like Ninja doesn't leverage his brand other than to focus on himself, whereas Mr. Beast does it to further the growth of the overall like empire, right? And that's why like Mr. Beast has come out and said if he was to sell off even just a portion of his overall company, right?
Oh
Like a
well,
portion, like
before you
you're
jump
talking,
too deep here,
like
I
you're
want to
talking a
put a pin in
billion
that
dollars.
real quick, and I want to bring pun up because I
Yeah,
don't want it to last go. I don't want to go on too long without him getting his input in before we forget. So let's get him up.
yeah, yeah. Pun. Feel free to
What's going
unmute.
on, guys? Nice seeing you guys again.
Bring it in, man. I want to hear it. I want to hear what you were thinking. Bring it
Well,
in.
I want to add to that Mr. Beast Ninja topic. I wouldn't even compare them just for the fact that Mr. Beast is putting in a lot more work. I mean, just as
Yeah.
far as the content standpoint, um,
Oh,
dude, he's uploading.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, he's uploading videos and literally in different languages, just re-uploading the same
yeah.
content and just he's just mass producing content like a warehouse, like a distribution
Yeah.
center, and that's something that I've never seen Ninja even touch or even come close to.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that Night Media has been like very exceptionally good with, is telling their creators, "Hey, make multiple channels for multiple languages," and like that's why and you know you see this even with like your TVNR, like or not Preston, but you know the people that do TBNR, I'm forgetting their names. But like TBNR has become a whole production thing where literally it's like 12 different channels between games, plays, different languages, lifestyle, like all these other sorts of things. Like and that's the same thing that you're seeing with like a lot of creators. Again, like the same way that a Mr. Beast is, where it's like we have Mr. Beast plays, Mr. Beast shorts, Mr. Beast Japan, Mexico,
So
Venezuelan.
I kind of want to bring this back down to earth a little bit in the sense of like the advertiser's perspective because that's all great, right? That's super great that they're creating a ton of content and then making it more accessible and everything. And I completely agree that Mr. Beast has taken the lion's share of like global distribution. But the reason why you kind of juxtapose them is because uh, as far as like mainstream acknowledgement, Ninja really got that first. So like as far as the trophy goes for that, he got that. And he was the
So
first
I
one
would
to go mainstream
say,
as far as distribution goes, with the fact that he got his brand into Walmart, was selling headbands and t-shirts prior to Mr. Beast getting his Mr. Beast bar into Walmart. So global distribution, Ninja had that global distribution as far as a product standpoint goes first, and then Mr. Beast got it. Now,
I see where you're coming from on that because I was going to argue from a content standpoint, from a content like distribution. No, Mr. Beast had him beat before Ninja could even try, but you're saying from a more commercialized standpoint with
from the brand, like the overall brand of it all,
yeah. Okay.
and so what Mr. Beast is doing actually better, I think, is he iterated on what Ninja did. Now, I think I could agree that Ninja has been lazy since the mixer mix up to like kind of make a funny
Oh
little.
no, I certainly agree with you. I mean, I'll be fair to Ninja. Okay, if I got paid out $60 million because the company shut down, I'm certainly going to kick back and relax and not have to worry as much, right? Like I think all of us, if we were in his position, would probably do the same exact thing to some extent, right? So I certainly agree with that.
When it comes to like branding, to answer your point, Trent,
Mhm.
I'd have to go neutral on that because I'd say in terms of branding, they both achieve massive success in like the respective fields, and like they both have made like very successful like a branding for themselves. But it ultimately, I feel like it depends on the individual like preference on like what you're looking to achieve when it comes to like success.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
like
both
how
I
you
think
they're
measure it.
it's different. I think it's different levels and measures of success because, like, you look at a Mr. Beast right now, who is more about sort of like is really focusing on entertaining and building like a massive like empire and or I don't even say Jimmy's really focused on building an empire. That's what Reed and Night Media is for. But like overall, like Jimmy is so focused on trying to build across the board, and then Ninja is sort of someone who you know, I'm sure I know he's done some investments in different companies and stuff like that, but like really, he himself has not really gone and done like a lot of um, vertical integration or a lot of expansion from a brand and a holistic approach to where it makes sense to compare the two.
Yeah, it's definitely now we have to go back and look at the money. So in 2018, right, Ninja's value was higher than Mr. Beast, even though Mr. Beast had like number two most subscribers on YouTube.
PewDiePie has always had number two.
But there was a turnover, right? So there was a turnover when PewDiePie was number one, and then that was
Yeah,
2018, right?
yeah, but that wasn't with that was with T Series.
Oh wait, T Series, right? Okay, that's right. That was the battle. Okay, so back then T Series and PewDiePie, and then so Mr. Beast was number three.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that there's tons of channels before him. What you're talking about is how I believe he is now. Mr. Beast has overtaken PewDiePie as the most individually subscribed YouTube channel. Is what you're
Well,
talking.
what I'm setting up basically is in 2018, nobody was offering Mr. Beast $2 billion for his channel, for his brand.
Sure. Oh yeah. No. I mean, I certainly agree.
So where it's at today, you know, uh, there's no comparison, like pun is saying, between Ninja and Mr. Beast over the course of 4 years now, right? So,
Sure.
but like, it's hard to even put anybody in the same light as Mr. Beast at this very moment. Like, if you put Meet Kevin is probably the closest because he just went live with his ETF, right?
I would
So,
never. I'm gonna be honest. I don't respect Kevin for a lot of reasons. Primarily because he's someone who the best way to put it is really like
he's an afraid mouse. He is a scared mouse.
no, it's really like one of the things is that is someone who primarily is more of a sort of the gray area of the attention economy, if that makes sense.
Well, I
Because
mean, see,
the
because
thing is like
I feel like you were going the direction a little bit because you were talking
no,
about real estate investment by esports orgs earlier to a degree.
yes, but the thing about it, like a Meet Kevin, is, and first off, I watched some of his videos, okay, but there are certain actions from him that I don't agree with. There are certain actions that he has done where it's like, you only did this for the exposure, or even in this case, like the ETF, right? Like he didn't need to do that, but he did that because, like, and which I think is a smart thing, right? But my God, like, once like the problem is, and I think where eventually that ETF is going to bite him in the neck is that eventually he's going to end up doing something where he recommends a stock or something of that nature in that ETF or talks about it and in a good light on the channel. And then someone goes and invests in the ETF and it does poorly and someone sues him because of that. Like that's why you
Oh
don't see a lot
God, you're not talking
because
Tesla.
it's a recommendation of a security to somebody. Right. So like that's that's what, or like this is why you see, like, for instance, Graham Stephan and all the other guys with Millennial Money, who, like, there's been talks of like, hey, will you guys get sued for promoting FTX just like a lot of these other big name, athletes and influencers did, right? And so, the thing also that you have to keep in mind, is that, just across the board though, like, I mean, I can see where you're coming up with the comparisons is like all these sorts of things, but I think again, like, it's very hard to compare a Mr. Beast to anybody else, without it coming off as sort of like a disingenuous or overhyping of the tangibles.
Well, you have to start scaling the money in some form or fashion, right? So if he's getting offered $2 billion and turning that down basically on what I'm hearing around the water cooler is that the valuation in the Mr. Beast circle is more around the $10 billion, in conversation.
So what he so um I'm trying to pull it up here exactly. So, um, from what I understand, to some extent, and I'm trying to find an article of it, but feel free to continue on with your point.
Well, the point that ends up being is like, I don't know how this even plays out, but like Elon Musk, from what we understand, his
Sure.
his value of lifetime value is somewhere like in the $1.5 trillion range or something like that. Like it's getting up there. Like Bezos was 1.1 trillion, then he passed him. Now he's at 1.5 trillion or something. Richest man in the world, right? As far as influence on the world goes,
Bezos isn't right now. I think
Bezos
Bezos
is.
is like third or fourth.
Oh yeah. I'm not even talking about Bezos. Bezos doesn't even do content like that. But
Well, sure.
Elon does content at the scale that that
Yeah.
Mr. Beast does, right? So
Okay.
arguably, I mean, Mr. Beast could buy a platform. Not, I don't think he will. Like, I don't think that's his.
Sure.
It does to a degree make sense because I feel like his motivation is to make to create content for his fans and for his fans to be happy based on the documentary by Samir and the other dude's name.
That I like to add. I mean, with him, he's playing the long game, dude. You know.
Yeah.
So I found the article about the whole Mr. Beast thing. So
Hmm.
what happened was is that someone he knew had come to him with an unofficial term sheet, for $1 billion if they could own the channel, the companies, and related things. Um, and he said that, um, the main reason why he didn't want to do it, from my understanding, is that, like, realistically, is that he doesn't want to work for his own channel, right? Like, and which I agree. Like, I'll be honest, if I was him, um, I certainly think that. Now, he actually has said that, like, 10 to 20 billion dollars is something that he'd feel more comfortable with, which I think is a fair valuation of, like, Mr. Beast, all the channels, all the companies, everything in between. Like, 10 to 20 billion dollars is not an unreasonable amount of money, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like like we're talking about really, really
Yeah.
just absurd things. Like the average content creator is getting nowhere near that. And that's the reason why
Oh
we have
no.
to kind of set the
I'll
stage.
say this. If you're making $250,000 as a content creator or an influencer, you're in a good area, right? Like, you're good. Like $250,000 from me. if I was doing this full time, like even $100,000 a year would be comfortable enough for me to like live, travel, do all sorts of stuff, and like still have money left over to do certain things. If I had $200,000, then hey, I know like I certainly could be doing even crazier things than what I'm doing right now.
Right. Well, you gotta then put that into perspective, though, and that's where, like, I think this is gonna really give me some pushback here, but that's why when I see people like Fresh and Fit podcast talking about like real numbers of like the amount of content creators that are doing that, it's in the 3%. It's less than 3% of content creators that are doing that of $250,000 a year, right?
I
So the
believe Twitch came out one time and said, or no, there was leaked data that came out from Twitch when
yeah,
Amazon got hacked,
yeah, yeah,
where
yeah.
it was like the top 1% make as much as like a certain like majority of people on the platform make combined, right?
Yeah.
So like I certainly agree with that, but and that's certainly like a reason why I don't give a care about money as much, like when it comes to brand deals or monetization or any of these
Hmm.
sorts of things. It's like if I wanted to make money off of different things, guaranteed there are ways I can do it. Whether it's by selling courses to people, whether it's selling merch, whether it's
Hmm.
monetizing podcasts, sponsorship, and affiliates. You look at, I mean, what I do most of my time, which is investing in companies that are crowdfunding, is
Hmm.
because hey, I'm gonna get equity. Most startups are not going to succeed, but a lot of the ones I'm investing in have already a 20 to $100 million, if not more, market cap. Like there's a company I'm about to invest into just in a couple days that has a $500 million market cap.
Hmm.
You know, and that company has a like. I can't name the company, even though that they're a very well established entertainment brand. I guarantee you, it would literally not surprise me if a company decided to acquire them tomorrow. Like that is how monumental this company is, right? And so like that's getting back to the whole point, very briefly, like why I just don't care about money as a content creator. It's like money's great, money's awesome, but do it because you love it, or in the like, and that's why like I bring up the whole point with Mr. Beast not wanting to work for his own channel is because at that point, like you're not enjoying it, you're an employee, you're
Mm.
working for something else. You get burned out by doing that, and so
See, this is why when I hear this argument about the juxtaposition between being a surgeon, you don't have to be a brain surgeon necessarily, but being a surgeon compared to being a content creator that makes $250,000 a year, right? The content creator who makes $250,000 a year is probably working as hard as a surgeon does that's making $250,000 a year, maybe even more, because the surgeon is more methodical and meticulous about their work than the content creator necessarily
so
has to be.
I mean, it depends on the type of content you're creating. So like if you're a mobile creator, like creating shorts and that's it, like someone like how a Nas Daily is, where you just did like a
Oh,
thousand.
you're talking on the fringe line right now by going almost towards OnlyFans conversation.
Well, no, I'm not even going to try to get into that. But I'm saying, if you look at some of these people like a Nas Daily who got big off of just posting like 1,000 shorts to Facebook and YouTube and some of the or YouTube and TikTok and some of these other places, right? Like, it became so important, right? And then like ultimately, the thing is like like you mentioned is that or where I was trying to go with this is that depending on the niche of content that you make, it depends on the amount of time that you're putting in. Like someone like me who's a content creator, like has practically sun up to sundown most days, or if not every day, to create content or stream. Like, you know, it takes me, and this is coming from someone who just does gaming content, right? Not planning out Mr. Beast or other types of creator wild antics, right? Like it takes me typically an hour to film like a batch of content. Let's say really like 20 minutes really to film a video, like a gameplay. Then probably an hour, if not more, to edit that video entirely. Now I've started the process of outsourcing my thumbnails to people. But even in the case like let's say Mr. Beast, they're spending 5 to 6 months on a single video at a time, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Even like a guy like Michael Reeves will literally only upload like 1 or 2 times a year because that video will do so well. He doesn't need to make a video a month or multiple videos a year to do it, right? Like, he's the guy who made a video of literally letting goldfish pick stocks for him, and the goldfish did better than the market.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the exception, not the rule, right?
But what I'm getting at is that like, you know, every niche has a certain amount of time in which you're putting towards it. Whereas like a brain surgeon, like I guarantee, again, like you're easily clocking in 100 hours a week, if not more, doing it right. So like, or you're an on-call surgeon, which doesn't mean you're always there, but
Well, that's like the worst case scenario, like you're an ER surgeon or something like that.
I mean,
but
don't forget the difference. I mean, just like when it comes to brain surgeon and like content creators are pretty much their own bosses. I mean, if they're not under like an org, they
or
stream on their own time. They don't have to clock in at a certain time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like that's one of the things I tell people all the time is like someone will ask me like, hey, when can we talk? And I've told people like you can message me at 2 o'clock in the morning. You can Discord call me 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I will answer because I answer to nobody. like that's why I own my own talent agency. I do my own deals for me, and
To,
it's simple as that, right?
to kind of
Now,
package this up in a way, it's autonomy, right? So the
oh,
difference in
exactly.
autonomy is between, I was going to say this earlier. I actually said this to myself earlier when I was thinking. Um, a lot of content creators, and the reason why you mentioned that brands aren't paying out uh, the money that they were pre-pandemic and during the pandemic and now afterwards is that a lot of content creators have quit and gone back to get a job, right? That whole get a job mantra that goes out when the naysayers of content creators say it's a low, their content's not making the same amount of money, they're over investing in production, et cetera, et cetera. um you know the naysayers say you should go get a job, go back to your day job or whatever, right?
Well, so that's not necessarily why a lot of creators quit. A lot of creators quit because burnout
Yeah,
or because the thing is like, can you establish long term like do you have a long term roadmap for yourself as a creator, right? Like if you don't, like let's say if you're not someone who is a cosplayer being able to be invited to movie premieres, to events, to large scale like Comic Cons, things like
I
that.
like what you introduced there. I like that. Yeah,
You
keep
know,
going.
whether you're someone like a Taya Miller or a Straw Hat Goofy or like a really good creator who I love on TikTok is Natalie Napples, right? Um, and she's the girl famous for on TikTok people guessing what she does for a job, to the point where all these companies are like, secret or like going to her agency behind, the scenes and being like, hey, we'll fly her out to the Dallas Cowboys headquarters and have her, do a video with the cheerleaders. Hey, we'll fly her to the Indianapolis Colts and let her do stuff with the mascots. hey, we'll fly her to the LinkedIn headquarters and make her do a TikTok in front of the LinkedIn headquarters, or like, like insert brand name here, because like they have an idea of like, one, we can make money off of this long term by doing these brand deals, but also because it keeps it going for so very long, like to the point where like she owned an entire sound on TikTok.
I'm gonna backtrack real quick to the part where you said roadmap. I cannot stress this enough, dude. I like that you said have a roadmap. And you know how important this is, just in general for esports. Like owning an organization, you need a business plan. You need to know what the fuck you're gonna do in the next 6 months, in the next year. Otherwise, what are you doing? You know, you need that set.
You're typically
Business
doing
plan.
what I'm doing, where I know that things out there exist, and then I just spend the time like
And I
working
feel
on
like,
trying to get like
go ahead.
one of the things that I do like is I got to a point where I was always trying to guess what bigger organizations were going to do. That like once organizations started getting like team branded credit cards going on the stock market, I just stopped like trying to reverse engineer. I reverse engineer what a lot of brands do, or like organizations do, but like um getting at where I was though is the whole factor of the matter being that realistically, like I don't have a roadmap for my esports team because I don't need to. It's like we've been around for almost 10 years now, to where it's like I can relax and not have to stress of like, hey, what were our like middle of the year plans to have accomplished, right? Like one of the things I've even told members over time is like, hey, if there's not a lot that happens between January to March, please be aware it's because the yearly anniversary of the organization is coming up, and I'm hoarding all the announcements, all the possible things in my head until March 21st when the organization turns another year. It's not that I don't have anything that I'm not doing. It's that I'm not the type of person to just, I want to make a big deal out of things. I don't plan, hey, I'm going to do this big thing. If I want something done, I'm going to go do it. Right. Like, one thing, where like autonomy is super important with myself, and where like I expanded vertically with my organization is I saw, like how 100 Thieves did hype tracks. I saw how there are streamers out there like Stallion who created Stream Seed, or whatever it's called, to do DMCA free music, right? And I said, how can I do that? I went and created something. I paid one of my staff guys to make a logo, and that's how we came up with Battle Cry. It's as simple as that. Like there was no planning into it. It's, hey, I saw someone else do it. I think it's a great business opportunity. I don't care if it makes short or long term revenue, but I'm going to do it because it creates value. So
I am still here, I think, right?
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. I wasn't quite certain. I got a phone call, and then
No,
I don't know how
you're
this
here.
works.
You're here.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as like content creator standpoints and the reason why people burn out, I mean, like I was referring back to when you were bringing up roadmap. A lot of these content creators don't have a roadmap. They don't know what they're gonna do. They don't have a goal. You know what I mean? And another reason I feel like could contribute. I don't think it's the naysayers that are telling them to go get a job. It's the fact that a lot of people, a lot of especially with the economy right now, a lot of people can't afford to stay at home and stream and make videos all day. They got
Mm-hmm.
rent to pay, they got groceries, they got things that they need to financial
Like,
obligations and
like,
stuff.
I mean, I'm 22. I live with my family still. A
Mhm.
couple $1,000s in credit card debt. But even then, like my job that I have for 4 days a week on nights, like realistically only pays me a couple $100 a week,
Mhm.
right? Like I could not afford to be in a place on my own where like rent where I live is like
It
$700-800,
it's
right?
tough, dude. I mean, for all of 2020, dude, when I was, doing when Alpha Dog was Alpha Dog Esports and we were in the Halo Championship
Mhm.
Series and competing, I was bootstrapping the entire time. I was
Oh,
paying
Awaken
players
on
out
day
of my own
one has
money
been
while working
boosted.
7 days a week. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah, I
was
mean,
grinding my ass off just to be in the top 8. You know?
yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, I know what it's like because Awaken from day one to now is still bootstrapped, right? Like I have never taken investors on it. I've had people offer me investment, and I've told people either one, you can't afford the price that I'd be comfortable with to sell you a portion of equity, and two, even if you were able, I'd still probably not because I pride myself on keeping my organization bootstrapped 100%.
I just want
And you want that creative freedom, and you like you said, you like being your own
I
boss.
just like to kind of like interlude a little bit because
Well,
my the thread that I posted, I this is where I kind of get frustrated with the word partnerships because in my mind, a true partnership is a formal business agreement with some form of investment into a company. Um, and the issue with the partnership use when it comes to like affiliate, no, that's the wrong word. Let's say the creator economy, right?
no, you're correct. Affiliate is um, what you're talking about with. So you're sort of getting things mixed up. What you're talking about with investment into a company is more of an equity partnership,
Oh,
um,
marketing. Marketing is the word. Like the more like general terminology, like larger picture.
So you're talking about those gaming brands that offer a discount code, but they're like an affiliate code, but they're not really a sponsorship. That's more of just like an affiliate marketing
Well,
firm.
that's like a component, right? But I mean, like even partnership, like they'll use that terminology for like sponsorship, right? As well. So
Yeah,
it's included, but this word partner is just like really being thrown around right now in the marketing world and in sales and marketing can like
yeah.
together, right? And
Sponsors and partnership. Yeah, both those words actually. I think.
so
yeah,
but like if you're get if we're really talking about partnership, it should be in the form of some formal investment, right? And I hear what you're saying, Tristan, and everything that goes into like what it would be for the word comfortable came out of your mouth, and I completely agree with this word, and I use this word in almost every single negotiation that I have these days. Is like people will want you to do so much and yet they're not concerned about how comfortable you are. Like, can you even do the work if you're not comfortable? Like, and maybe if you propose that argument towards Mr. Beast, he'd laugh in your face, or Jocko Willink, Joe Rogan, whoever, right? They'd be like, "You're just, your inner bitch," or whatever is what they say. Like, you have to beat your inner bitch. But like, dude, it's like, were we entering a recession? Like, are we not gonna be like realistic about like what you said earlier, Tristan? People are cutting down on their um, influencer spend, which is a component of marketing, right? So the companies' brands are cutting down on their marketing spend, you know.
yeah.
So like, I don't know if investment, venture capital is going down any, but that's from everything that I hear. People are investing less money in companies.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are some venture capital firms who are going and telling people like you have or you've had great revenue or great traction, but not that great, right? And also I think like a lot of venture capital firms right now are still licking their wounds because like people revere Sequoia, and Sequoia just got outed for being literally dumb with due diligence over FTX.
Right. Yeah.
Like because literally, like I forget who it is that broke it, but someone came out with an article that like Sam Bankman-Fried while on an investor call was playing League of Legends, and to them at Sequoia, they thought like, oh, this is the type of guy we should be investing billions of dollars into.
Mm. I'm pretty sure the person who made that popular was CoffeeZilla. I don't know.
No,
Who.
no. This was an actual article, like because this was like a mainstream news publication.
Oh, gotcha. Hmm.
Because eventually it got to the point where someone asked like, or they, someone started like diving in, and found his actual like League of Legends profile. So like it was a mainstream news publication that broke this news at first, that like Sequoia literally, like he literally would play League of Legends frequently on business meetings. Yeah. um But no, I mean, and I know you've been relatively like silent here and there. Um, is there any like topics that you want to bring up with esports and influencers, or one or the two?
I mean, as far as esports, I feel like it's in a weird position right now, just in terms of everything that's been going on, like mainstream. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of just taking a little bit of a backseat just to observe and see what's going on before I make any moves. I'm actually working with another company right now, just working on some projects for a different scene or
Mm-hmm.
market, I guess you would say. We do have a investing, we're in talks with an investment firm. So we're starting to get some moves going on. It's like an
Yeah.
app that's being created. But
Okay.
other than that, I've been keeping my nose to the ground. Just kind of seeing what's going on with just the market and just the overall industry. Um, I mentioned it earlier in the thread, or that Twitter. What is it called? Twitter groups now.
Communities. Yeah.
Twitter communities. Yeah, I posted it earlier. I noticed
Yeah.
several colleges and universities starting to do esports classes and esports marketing, esports
Yeah.
communication, like live events or whatever. Uh, and I know I got Trent's take on this. What do you think about universities doing that? Like, is
So
this?
I actually am for it. If they have the right people teaching it, is my big thing, right? Like if you take, for instance, a guy like Alex Gonzalez, who works at Luminosity, but also is teaching esports curriculum at like Shenandoah University, then by all means, right? Like unless if you're not having people who are from the space teaching an esports business course, or like lumping in generalized like classes into it, then by all means, right?
Mhm.
Like this is why UCI, like a lot of people love UCI's esports management program, or certificate
Yeah,
program.
that was actually what I was referring to. Actually, I saw that they had some. I'm trying to remember. They had some people from the esports program over at Blizzard. They
Yeah,
had like a bunch of big names over there.
yeah, and they're bringing in people who are knowledgeable in the space rather than being like, oh, we have a bunch of professors who are going to teach you about shit.
Hmm. So
I mean,
in
like, this
terms
is
of
also
that,
why
like,
you look at um mentorship programs like Enlight, which is run by Eunice Chen,
mhm,
formerly of Cloud9 and Riot Games, who brings in people from all like Bryce Blum and Rashid Chada from Twitter and all these other people to educate people on the space.
mhm.
Granted, some of these people, ultimately, like for instance, we're part of that whole like esports certification institute that didn't go well.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I agree with you that like I have taken a step back primarily from like an esports perspective in teams, even though that means that I like am having to deal with not like as many followers, or like just non-existent growth over
Hmm.
time, or a purge in followers happening. I'm perfectly okay with that. right? Because like you and I both come from the same space where Call of Duty is a money pit. Other games like CS:GO and Rainbow Six are not as much a money pit, but it's still very hard to make money in those games. Like I've found more value in being able to give content creators benefits like cash incentives or an internal reward system that works better than like, hey, like paying everyone, $20-$30 salaries as content creators. And that's why like a lot of times it's like, hey, like I'll get a creator who's like, hey, I want to go chase money, and I'm like, hey, all the more to you, right?
I mean, with me, it felt more. When I was doing esports, more like being involved with esports and managing a team. For me, it was more personal. Um,
Yeah,
it was more of like I wanted to prove that I can do it. You know what I mean? Before I started doing more things in the industry, and I feel like I got that in the last 2 years.
yeah,
We made it to like 3 Halo Championship Series, top 8 placings. We went up against teams like
yeah,
Cloud9, KC Pioneers. We ended up getting invited to the Sentinels $30,000 send off
yeah,
Halo 5 tournament. Like, dude, like I did shit that I didn't think I would be able to do ever in my lifetime when it came to esports, and
yeah,
I accomplished that within like a year or two of opening my org. You know, so now I'm kind of like taking a back seat after after Infinite came out. I felt kind of burnt from 343, just the way they were treating the grassroots program. They pretty
yeah.
much shitted on literally all the grassroots organizations and said, you know what, we're gonna start taking in partnering the teams that we're gonna partner in Phase, we're gonna partner Optic, G2 Esports, all the organizations that were not around during Halo 5's downtime and contributing to the community, but we were just gonna do it because of the viewership that it brings us and fuck
Yeah.
the grassroots partners. So that kind of burned me.
I still regret, like, I still hate 343 for not letting in KCP because I felt as if any team
They
that
deserved
got,
it.
oh, absolutely, like they had just held a major in Kansas City where they showed up like optic at esports stadium style, and like, while they didn't win it, they made that feel like a whole great thing. They have the NFL partnerships, they have all the stuff behind them, and I know Nick, and I knew LJ very well,
Mm-hmm.
and and all them. And it certainly is a blow, right, to the Halo scene, but I don't think they'll ever recover from, when it comes down to it. So I
It's
mean, certainly,
it's bad. it's
yeah.
it's 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 really bad. I still talk to the players here now, but like every time I talk to them, dude, their morale, that the entire Halo scene is so down right now. It's not even funny.
I
I mean,
think
they
that
just released Forge,
if
and
you look
people
across
still
the
don't.
board though, with all esports games, you look at Call of Duty, people have a worse distrust for Activision than ever.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Riot, like Riot, I guess Riot's actually not like the only time where I feel like Riot certainly caught heat for something that wasn't right was not allowing Optic into Valorant after placing second at a major. Like, um, I mean, Overwatch, again, Activision. I've said so many things about Activision with Overwatch that I think there could be an entire like
Well,
mini series on Netflix about it.
I hate to interrupt this like beautiful conversation about esports, but
Yeah.
what do you guys think is going to be the consequence of what's happening for Microsoft and what happened for Riot in this past week? Because that's got to trickle down to esports some way. The fact that
So I know what's happening with Microsoft, but what happened with Riot?
the $534 million thing that Jake Lucky broke about the FTC issue of them having to pay back all the parents that kids stole their mom's credit card.
Um. Oh, are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about Epic. Okay,
Oh,
you're
I
talking
said
about
Epic. I
Epic
said
Games.
Riot, didn't I?
Yeah.
You don't think that's
Um.
going to happen to the rest of Riot and all the other brands as well? I mean,
No, I don't. Because I mean, the problem is with so the reason that what happened is that um what Epic did is a practice of collecting personal information of children under the age of 13 without obtaining consent, right? Like that was they illegally enabled like real-time voice and text communications. That's one thing, right? Like that's a whole different thing. I assume what you're talking about with Microsoft is the Activision acquisition. That I don't see there being any sort of problem with that, right?
Well, I think the
So
problem that they were saying was that um, they'd already done business that they're going to have to reverse based on all these exclusive titles that they said that they weren't going to make.
such a I know Call of Duty they said they're not making exclusive, so I don't know which one
It was definitely
the
first party Bethesda games, but I don't remember
yeah, but
entirely.
the movie don't even care about Bethesda games though.
I don't know. So the money has to come from
I'm
somewhere,
sorry.
though.
I know I'm gonna get shit for saying this, but really, does anyone care about Bethesda games? Unless you're a casual gamer, does anyone really give a care?
Does Bethesda makes Elden Ring?
Um I'm looking up right now this.
So I'm about to say, I think a lot of people care about Bethesda if they do.
So looking at it,
I don't know, from software.
okay, yeah, so they do Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Doom, um, and
Wolfenstein. But I
yeah,
mean, even after the hype for Elden Rings dies, then what?
um, but wait, I think
Are they apart? I don't even know.
I'm pretty sure, but like the thing is though, I forget who owns or ZeniMax owns Bethesda though.
No, Bethesda or no, sorry, Elden Ring is Bandai Namco.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls is owned by Microsoft.
Yeah. 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 So like I mean like that's the thing that I'm saying is like and again unless you're a casual player none of these games really matter to this conversation but
Well, I mean, what
it,
I'm saying is the budget has to come from somewhere to pay that money back, right? So,
sure. Well,
and we,
so for Microsoft has, and pardon my language here, Microsoft has fuck you money, right? I mean, Epic Games has fuck you money. Okay, like they could violate COPPA 10 times over and pay $200 million each time, and I guarantee you, Epic Games would not be sweating. Like that's the thing is, and I truly believe that.
Even then, I mean, there's only so many times you can fuck up before the entire fucking industry is just against you.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? But no, I mean, I certainly agree, across the board, and yeah, I think that like, I mean, I will say this: I'm for the Activision merger with Microsoft. Um, yeah, I think first off, any way to get rid of Bobby Kotick from the gaming industry is a good thing. Um, I think I mean, um, it leaves us only one really crappy studio left, that being EA, but that's just my opinion.
I feel like honestly, with the whole Activision Microsoft, I don't care as long as I still get Spider-Man 2. That's all I give a shit about.
Honestly, one of the things that I hope um, they bring up as an argument during this like whole FTC lawsuit with Microsoft and Activision I'd love for Microsoft's lawyers when dealing with Sony to be like, excuse me, you have games like Detroit Become Human, which are PlayStation exclusives. We offered you the same deal that we did to Steam and Nintendo, and you guys are bitter, right? Like I remember Gabe from or no, Gabe from Valve. Literally, someone asked him or someone from Steam like, are you guys at all concerned about Microsoft's like 10-year commitment, offer, yada yada? And they're like, oh, we take them at our word. Like we trust them. Like we don't need a contract.
I respect what I said earlier. Fucking not Activision, Insomniac.
Okay, yeah.
As
Yeah.
long as I get Spider-Man 2, I'm fine. Just don't touch that.
I mean, I personally would like to see any way for from Microsoft and Xbox to make Detroit Become Human an Xbox game officially. That's just me.
Honestly, I mean, when it comes to Xbox, dude, like the last fuck, it doesn't feel like there's been any good exclusives for a while. I mean, yeah,
No.
Halo Infinite came out. Like there hasn't been like a like PlayStation has God of War, it has Last of Us, it has just like timeless games that are just
Yeah.
enjoyed. And instead, over Microsoft, we get Halo, which has been heavily criticized lately. Gears
Yeah.
of War, which the scene is completely dead at this point.
Yeah.
What else? Forza, which is like,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, but other than that, I mean, what big exclusives does Microsoft have right now, or have created with? I mean, they're buying out all these studios, but where are the games? Like if you go to the
Yeah.
Game Pass right now, dude, you get a bunch of shitty platformers, and it's.
Well, I think that's one of the things that they've said with the Activision merger or Activision acquisition is that if Microsoft were to get it, a lot of those games would like under the Activision library that are for console would go on to Game Pass, including Call of Duty. They wouldn't be
Hmm.
exclusive, but like um I forget exactly what Phil Spencer said, but I know that they did talk about Activision and Game Pass a lot.
But how would this? Okay, so Activision, merging in with Microsoft, how would this affect Call of Duty, like cross-platform?
Well, you know what
Okay,
they're trying to do,
okay,
right?
so this is what Phil Spencer said. He said, "We intend to make Activision Blizzard's much loved library of games, including Overwatch, Diablo, and Call of Duty, available in Game Pass, and to grow those communities." So, like, they've committed to three big franchises, both in reverse and future, being on Game Pass, which doesn't mean that they're exclusive though. They've said that they're still committed to making the same versions of Call of Duty available on PlayStation when the game launches elsewhere.
Well, this conversation is like there's so many different things that can be said about this conversation, but the reason why this conversation has to happen because you have to differentiate casual gaming from competitive gaming.
Yeah.
And Microsoft is not interested in competitive gaming. Like, look at what their moves are. They're deciding to make a partnership with Samsung so that all new Samsung televisions have Xbox Game Pass on them. So you get
Hmm.
an Xbox by buying
I
the
mean, if you
latest.
look at not even that, dude. I mean, like I'll just speak on Halo just because it's like my specialty. But I mean, even with what 343 is doing with Halo, I mean, look, they made a TV show where the director admitted that he never even read the material. He just wanted it to be made for a new audience. Like the actions that they're doing, it's like they're not, they're not doing it for the scene that's already there, the competitive players, the gamers that already put their time in. They're trying to bring in a whole different demographic of gamers, and it's honestly, I think it's like a war that's going on right now between the competitive and the casuals, because a lot of the competitive players, the esport, minds out there, I mean, personally, I hate it. You know what I mean? It's you're watering down the franchises by doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, and I appreciate like all the conversation we've had on all these things. Um, and ultimately, like I think that there's some serious like follow up conversations we could have about all of this. Um, yeah, I mean, granted, we went 2.5 hours with this alone, which I certainly think is says a lot. That there's so much to talk about with esports influencers, publishers, like the whole state of affairs across the board. Um, Pun, I'd love to have you on, my podcast in future spaces to like talk about this more in detail. Um, because one, like, I've had you on a list of people I wanted to talk to like individually for quite some time, and I just keep forgetting to reach out. So, but send the wolves after me. I don't give which is fair. But like I certainly again Trent, like I certainly appreciate you wanting to and being willing to come on and talk about all this, and the same with you, Pun.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what I'm gonna
There's
do from here? Oh, go ahead, Trent.
I was just gonna say, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's just everything has a little bit of a contribution to like how aspiring content creators should be looking at making money or just even enjoying their time in this space. Because, like you said, a lot of it is about mental health, and we didn't even get into that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, again, guys, I really appreciate all the fun chats and stuff like that. I don't want to take up too much of your guys' night because again, we've been at the Trent, you and I have been at this for 2.5 hours at this point.
Yeah, we
Um,
just haven't hit the 3 hour mark yet, man. That's just if it's a real podcast, it goes
I
past three
haven't done
hours,
a
right?
3 hour thing in a very long time. Let's be fair. I think the last time I did a 3 hour podcast or 3 hour conversation with anyone was probably back during the pandemic. So,
Well, I'll tell you
um,
this: I'm gonna try and rip this before you give it to me, and I'm gonna put it out, and I'm gonna chop it up, and I'm put everybody's tags on it and everything like that. But yeah, I hope that I'm gonna definitely promote it and everything like that, and redistribute it and all those things as a good content creator should. So I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me on your show and everything. Follow me on Twitter because that's where I want everybody to go, the EBN community. And I just got a message though that's saying that like Twitter doesn't give a shit about communities. So I don't know if this is even worth it, but like it's all good.
all right. Well, I'm gonna let you guys get going, and Pun, I'll reach out to you later on tonight. Schedule some time with you for a follow up conversation.
Sounds good, man.
All right, you guys take care.
See you
Later on the
guys.
next one.
Good night.